Hi everyone, my name is Jessica and this is my video for this week's Module 3 discussion. So last week we learned about racial identity, and as I was thinking back on it, I realized that I probably didn't start developing racial identity until around middle childhood. I grew up in Yuma, Arizona, which is a rural town that borders Mexico. The county is predominantly Hispanic and Spanish speaking culture, so I always related to most of the people around me. I first became aware of my racial identity when I would overhear adults talking about immigration. Most of the conversations revolved around fear of being deported. I learned that a few of my relatives did not have legal status here in the United States, and a lot of them crossed over illegally. Also, growing up with Spanish only speaking parents, I noticed that they were treated differently within certain establishments and were almost always expected to speak English, even though we live in a community that is mostly Hispanic. But those observations gave me the awareness to see race as something that's shaped how others perceive not just me, but those around me. With regards to my experience with institutional racism, I have two that I remember very clearly. The first I remember is going to the food stamps office with my mom when I was about 9 years old, and I remember we were called up to meet the worker helping with the application. I was taken back by the way that she spoke to my mom, because it was almost like she had done something wrong. It didn't seem like she was trying to be helpful. The lady's tone of voice and demeanor was very hostile and just plain rude. And so when we finished, again, my mom wasn't trying to argue back or anything like that. She was being cordial. But when we finished, the lady asked my mom to stick around so that another person can make copies of some of the documents that my mom had with her. And while we were waiting, the same lady attended another person, and the other person was white, so she was English speaking, and it was a complete 180 in the way that she treated this new person. I mean, she was laughing, she was happy, she just was being so nice. And I was trying to figure out, maybe if it was something my mom did, maybe they knew each other, maybe there was another explanation for the change in her mood. But when I think back at that experience, I do think it's maybe it could have been, institutional racism. Another funnier, more lighthearted experience I feel that most Hispanics can relate to is that whenever my parents received mail, they asked my sister and I to read it for them because it was always in English. And I had this conversation a while ago with my mom, and she said that they just didn't give her the option to have things mailed in Spanish, or she never was able to find a way to request them to be in Spanish, nor was she asked what language she wanted those documents. But I do feel that this was a form of institutional racism because it did create a disadvantage for this specific racial group, who again is only Spanish speaking. Around the age that I began to notice and experience this institutional racism, I was schooled age, so I was in Erikson's industry versus inferiority psychosocial stage of change, psychosocial stage. In children, this stage develops competence and intellectual, social, and physical skills. So when children fail to gain that competence, then they develop feelings of inferiority. For me at this age, I was questioning everything. I was observing so much. I was just soaking everything in. And I remember that I asked a lot of questions during these events of institutional racism, but I never told anybody about it. I just asked myself all these things. And with regards to critical race theory, one action I can take to challenge power structures that perpetuate racial inequality is to advocate for changes in agency policy and obtaining this information firsthand by those who have been affected. So that's very much mentioned in the article, Critical Race Theory and Opportunities for Application in Social Work Practice and Policy. So basically says that social change starts with challenging these racial injustices and including those who have been affected by the injustice in the solution. The last question asks how I would have handled that situation differently, and I don't think I would have handled it differently because I was too young to really know. But thinking back on it now, I think I would have just created an open dialogue with my parents about the situation and maybe help them find a solution if I could have at that age. And yeah, that's my video. Thank you, everybody. Bye.